Hi there, it's Reed from Blue Bear Quilts. Welcome to another YouTube video. This time I'm going to be showing you how I made this Island Pop quilt. To make this quilt, I used Island Batik Maple Island fabric and two Studio 180 design rulers. Let me show you the two Studio 180 design rulers that I used to make this quilt. The first one was the V-block tool that created the V shapes in the quilt. And then the second one is the corner pop tool, and that created basically half square triangles all the way around the V-block. So these are the two Studio 180 design rulers that I'm using to make this quilt. So let's get started and I'll show you how I made it. So in order to get started with the Into the Woods table runner, we need some beautiful batik fabrics. And look at this gorgeous selection of batiks from Island Batik. This collection is called Maple Island. And we have what appear to be some beautiful fern leaves, or perhaps evergreen leaves, some what look like a birch tree, some beautiful leaves against a teal green background, some pine cones and pine needles. These appear to be juniper berries. Some more what are like either evergreen leaves or some type of a fern. Some more birch tree in more of a green. And last but not least, some more of the beautiful leaves. So I'm going to get started. Some of the tools that you're going to need: Deb Tucker's V-block tool. And I'll be demonstrating how to use these tools. A regular straight edge ruler such as this quick trim and circle ruler by Creative Grids. This is a 12.5 inch by 3.5 inch ruler. And the corner pop tool from Deb Tucker's Studio 180 Designs. And you'll also need a rotary cutter like this one from Quilter Select. Any will work, but I really like this one from Quilter Select. You'll need some pins to hold your pieces together. You'll need some thread, such as beautiful Orville 50 weight cotton thread. You will need a sewing machine that allows you to do a nice 1/4 inch stitch, and you will need an iron. So I'm going to demonstrate how to make the small V blocks, and they're going to be made with the V block trimmer. And so the first thing we have to do is determine what size strips we need. So the small V block in this table runner is 4 inches finished. And so we look along here and it says for 4 inch finished, we need 5 inch strips. So I have cut a 5 inch strip of the fabric. And the next thing is I am left-handed, so I lay the fabric like this, going horizontal. And if you are right-handed, you would lay the fabric like this, with the open end over here on the left. Now normally what happens is you would leave the layers doubled and fold it up like this, and then you take and place the ruler on there and make a cut. Place the ruler on there like this and then make a cut. But I'm not going to do that because that would actually give me two. There would be one here and one there. And this is the first cut that gets made. So I'm just going to fold one layer of fabric over, like that. And then we take and we line this where it says fold line for center triangle, and we put it with the 4 inch finished strip right here. And I'm sorry about that noise. There appears to be a motorcycle that just started up outside. And so I have the 4 inch line along here, And I have where it says folded line for center triangles on the bottom of the fold. And get it lined up like that, and then take your rotary cutter and just slide from one end to the other. And that did not cut. So I'm going to have to try it again. Not sure why it didn't cut. But it looks like I'm not going to get a good cut, so I'm actually going to take and cut this off, and we'll start over. So I'm just going to make another straight cut. I can use this ruler to do that. Now actually I'm going to do my other one so that it actually gets straight lines. So I'm going to take and put the lines there along that and get a nice straight cut. Okay, we'll try this one more time. So lay the strip like this, fold it up like this, so there's one layer. Okay. Then we take our V-block tool and we're going to put the 4-inch finished strip line along here, and the folded line for center triangle right along that bottom fold. So again, the 4-inch line is there, the dotted line is along the fold at the bottom. And this time, before I move it, I'm going to make sure that it's cut. I just changed this blade, I don't understand. Okay, so there we go. There we've got a single center triangle that we need. Now if we were to keep going, we would leave it like this with the cut angle. And this works the same way if you have it folded in half. So when it's folded in half, you're going to get two. So if you wanted to make more center triangles, like in other words, I only need one of these for this particular table runner, but if I needed multiples of it, you would take and flip this over. Like if you're left-handed, you flip it east to west, and if you're right-handed, you flip it north to south. And then we have this cut edge along the bottom. We now take the ruler, going the same direction, only now we're going to take and line up this one that says center triangle trim line. And put it along the cut line, and then put the 4-inch finished strip along there, and cut right like that. And you can see that would give us another piece just like that. And so then you would, after you've got that cut made, you would flip it again, and we're not going to be able to see it, but there would be another one, and you would cut the next one, and you would just keep going like that. And it works the same way if it's folded in half. It's going to be kind of hard to see this because the fabric matches, but there would be two pieces of fabric here, and so as you continue cutting, you would continue to get two pieces each time you cut. So that's the first step of making these center triangles. Now the next step will be to make the side triangles that go on either side of this V-block. Now to cut the side triangle pieces, the strips are cut the same size, so they are also cut at 5 inches. We're going to use the same section of the ruler, only this time we're going to be using the solid black line against the bottom. So we put the solid black line up against the bottom, and the 4-inch finished line over here on the right hand side. And we make a cut along like that. And we're getting two at once because we have the strip folded in half. So now we leave the strip in the same position, and now we take the ruler and we flip it the other direction, and we look for the 4-inch finished line along here. Well, we actually look for this long diagonal line. and put it right here like this. So there's the long diagonal line. It's actually at 3.5 inches. And if we were to put this on there, we can see that it's going to make the same cut. So I'm going to get this lined up on here nicely. So it's actually a 2-inch line right there that's lining up with the left edge. This long diagonal line is lining up along the bottom here, and it's leaving that same little notch up at the top. And we just cut along this straight edge. Then we leave the ruler in the same position again, and we take and we flip it once again, and we're going to put that bold line again on the bottom and the 4-inch finish line on the right hand side here. And we make this cut. And so then we would flip the ruler again and go with the long diagonal line that's right here, this long diagonal line, line it up on the bottom, line up this 2-inch line over here, and then make another cut. So when we've done this, we get the pieces that look like this. And so we'll put our center square there. So this side, which is the right side of the fabric, I had these with the wrong sides together. So you're going to take and pull this one from the bottom and turn it like that. So now we have the right side of both of these. And I know that, like in batiks, it doesn't seem like there's a right and wrong side, but there actually is. And you just have to pay attention to like where the fold is, and you can keep track of which is the right side. So again, this is the right side is down here on the bottom, flipping it like that. And those are the side triangles. So the next thing that we need to do would be sew these. And it's important to have this flat edge lined up with the tip down there at the bottom, and then you go along like this, and it's also lining up with that tip there. So basically you're lining it up from tip, so see that tip is lined up, and this one is also lined up. So you're lining it from tip to tip, and you sew a 1/4 inch along there. And I'll do that, and then I'll show you how the next piece goes on. So I sewed a 1/4 inch along that edge, and then I took and finger pressed it like this, and then took the iron and just pressed it in place. And now it's time to put the other side on. And so it, again, is going to line up with that tip right there. And it's also going to line up with that tip down at the bottom. And again, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch. So I'll do that and then show you what the completed little unit looks like. So now I've sewn the other side unit on. I took and pressed this to set the seam, then I finger pressed it, and then I pressed it with my iron. And that's what the finished V-block unit looks like. Well, the start of the finished, it's not quite finished yet. And that's what it looks like on the back. It's nice and neat. So now we need to trim up the, trim it to the final size. So we're going to again be using the finished size, and we're going to align the finished size measurements with the seams of our block. So we're going to be using the 4-inch finished seam. So we're going to put that little triangle that says 4 inches right there in the peak like that, and we're going to line up the line along that seam and line up the line along that seam. And when sometimes it's like it's not going to be exactly on the lines, but you get it as close as you can. And then we make a cut along this side and a cut along this side. So we had the ruler positioned like this, and the 4-inch was on those seams, and we trimmed along here and here. Now we're going to take and flip this 180 degrees, and we're keeping our ruler in the exact same position. And now we're going to look at the cut sizes. So since this block is going to finish at 4 inches, the cut size is always going to be the unfinished size, which is going to be 4.5. So we're going to line up this 4.5 inch line here on the bottom, and there's also a 4.5 inch line over here on this side, and we're going to line both of those up on the two sides that we just cut. So there we go. I've got it lined up along that side. I've got it lined up along the bottom. And then we also have it lined up right here. There's a little X, and we want that little X to be right in the middle of the block like that. And then we cut along these remaining two sides. And that is our finished V-block unit. And so the next step is we're going to be using the corner block tool to put corners on this block. And I'm going to show you that the great thing about these rulers, like this V-block trimmer and the corner pop tool, is that you can make multiple sizes. So in this table runner pattern for Into the Woods, there also are larger V-blocks. So this is a 6-inch finished V-block, and this is the 4-inch V-block. So both of those are incorporated into the quilt. And these larger units were created the exact same way that I created this smaller unit. The only difference is the size of the strips that were cut. And for a 6-inch finished, it says to cut strips 7 inches. So in order to make these units, the strips were cut 7 units. And in order to make strips this size, to make units this size, the strips were cut 5 inches. So that is how the V-block trimmer works to make V-blocks. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is putting corners on with the corner pop tool. So the next thing that we have to do is we're going to put corners all the way around these V-blocks. And we're going to use the corner pop tool in order to do that. So we need to look for the cutaway corners, and these seem to go in 1/4 inch increments here, and these seem to go in 1/2 inch increments here. And the pattern says that it would be a 2.5 inch stitch and flip square that we would put on there, so that when we look at the chart in the corner pop instructions, it says that we would need to cut away a 2-inch, we would use a 2-inch cutaway corner. So you can see I've already cut a couple corners off here, but we'll do another one. And so I'm going to turn it like that, and I'm going to place the 2-inch line right here, and then this solid line right here. So that's going to basically cut a 2-inch corner off, triangle off, and it's going to leave that extra 1/2 inch that we need to sew the next piece on and still give us a 2-inch finished half square triangle on the edge of this block. So I'm carefully, and this part I think you have to do fairly detailed. Like some of this doesn't have to be so exact because it's oversized, but I think this part needs to be fairly careful. So I'm lining that up and cutting that corner off. And then I've got one more corner to cut off, and it's this one right over here. And again, I'm going to take the 2-inch corner, which is right here, and line it up like this. So the 2-inch line is on that right side, and then this solid line here is on the bottom. And we're getting that lined up right with the corner. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're going to lop that corner off. Now in the pattern, these units go a particular way. So this one would go this way. And now we're going to add corners to this piece like this. And in the picture in the pattern, you can tell that the blue are up here at the top and that this is facing over to the left and the white are on the bottom. And so in order to get those squares that need to go on there, again, you look at the pattern for a 2.5 inch stitch and flip square, and basically we need to cut a 3¼ inch square, and then we take and line it up on our ruler and cut it in half, and these are the oversized triangles that we need to make these corners. So the blue and the white are both the same size. They both were cut at 3¼ inches. So in order to sew these on, and I'll show with the white, you basically flip this over like this and line it up so that you have equal amount or approximately equal amounts of the white on either side, and then just stitch it 1/4 inch along there. And you do that for all 4 of these corners. And I've started to do that here. And then I've also cut 2 of the corners. So because these blocks are going to be nesting with each other, if I bring this one back over, it's going to go like this. And we have the white on the bottom here, and the white's on the top here, and the blue is on the bottom here. So because these two are going to intersect, I want to press them opposite directions. And that's the beauty of using this corner pop tool, is that they can be pressed alternate directions. So on this, I have pressed the white towards the dark on both sides, and I've pressed the blue towards the blue. So over on this one, this is going to be pressed towards the dark, which will cause these seams to nest up. And so that's the beauty of being able to press it whatever direction you need to go. So we have to go back to the corner pop tool now in order to trim these corners. And now we're going to use a different section of the ruler, and it's this section over here, which is called the corner trim down section. And again, we're going to use the 2-inch line. So that 2-inch line is going to line up right here with, oops, sorry about that, with the edge of that seam. And then we want this edge to be lined up here, and we want the top to be lined up here. And that looks pretty good. So then we just take and cut along this side and cut along this side. And then we have a nice corner there. And then I have one last one to do, and it's this one that's been pressed towards the blue. And again, I'm going to line up that 2-inch line right there. And at this point, I practically can take this line over here. There's some dotted lines on the ruler. I can practically put that line right there and this line right here and see what happens. It's like the 2 inches pretty close. I'm going to slide it down a little bit. And it looks like it's just about okay on the top there. And it looks pretty good over here on this side. So I'm going to take and trim this and this. And there we go. There's our perfectly trimmed up block for our Into the Woods table runner. And The method is exactly the same for the 4-inch units. The only difference is instead of the stitch and flip being 2.5, it's going to end up being 2 inches, and it's going to make a 1.5 inch finished half square triangle, and there will be 4 of those all the way around as well. Now I'm going to show you how I use the corner pop tool in order to cut off the corners of the smaller unit. These were 4-inch finish units, and I've already cut a couple of the corners off, and the instructions would say that the stitch and flip squares that should be put on here to put corners on it should be 2 inches, which are going to finish at 1.5. So that means we need to use the 1.5 cutaway corner in order to do this. So I'm going to take and line up the 1.5. That's the 1.5 line right there, and then the solid line, and I'm going to line that up right along that edge like this, and then we cut that corner off. And we've got one more corner over here, and we're going to do the same thing. Take this 1.5 line, put it on the right hand side. That bottom straight line will go along the bottom edge. Make sure we've got it all nice and lined up. And we chop this corner off. And there we go. So now, on these units, the blue pieces are going to go up here and the white pieces are going to go down here. So once again, we need to cut out a square, and these squares were 2 3/4, I believe, and then they're cut in half. And so each one of those is going to go on here like this. And then we also need the same size white squares that were cut in half to make these pieces, and they're going to go right there. So once again, in order to sew this, we flip this piece onto here like this and make sure that we have an equal amount of those little peaks sticking out on both ends. And then we sew 1/4 inch along there. So it ends up looking like this on the front, and you're actually able to do all 4 of these at once. So this is what it would look like once the 4 corners are sewn on. We then take and press this with an iron and finger press it out and do that all the way around. And when we've done that, we get a piece that looks like this. And now, just like on the larger units, we have to square this up. And so once again, because these were 2-inch stitch and flip squares, it's going to be 1.5. So now we're going to use the corner trim down side of the ruler, and we're going to look for the 1.5 inch line, and we're going to put that right on that seam. We're going to mark this edge with the top up here, and this edge over here with that left edge. And I discovered a little trick on these. Like, if your sewing is pretty good, you basically can line up these lines on all 4 sides. And this isn't going to be quite on the seam line, but it's going to be pretty close. And this way you can actually trim up 2 sides at once. So I'm going to go along like this, trim that side off, come up here, and trim this side off. Then I'm going to take and rotate this 180 degrees, and once again put that 1.5 inch line on that seam line and get all 4 of these lined up as well. And so you can see there's a dashed line right here, And I'm going to get that so that it's lined up in the corners. And this looks pretty good. So then we can finish off these other two sides. And there is our completed 4-inch unit that started out as a V block and now has 4 half square triangles on the sides. So the blocks for the Into the Woods table runner have all been sewn, and they started off being a V block that then we took the corner pop tool and put these corners on. And now the blocks go next to each other like this, and they get flipped over. And then the nice thing is, because we pressed the blue to one side and the white to the other, these seams actually nest with each other. I don't know if you can see that, but they're like right next to each other. And so then when sewing them together, we just want to put a pin like that so you can see that they're going to nest very nicely. So then we take and sew them together. And this is what they look like. And then on the back, because there's a whole bunch of seams coming together, we want to press this seam open. And then those sets of blocks get sewn together in pairs like this. And so there are going to be 3 sets of these that are then going to get combined, which form the center section of the quilt. I will sew that center section together and show it to you, and then show you how the borders get added on. So this is the Into the Woods table runner that's almost finished. You can see that I've sewn a couple of the border pieces on. This is just pieces of this blue and white dot fabric with the small 4-inch finished blocks in between. And it's important, even though this border is measured, to get these points to line up with this point. So I'm going to show you how I do that with this last remaining border piece that has not been sewn onto the runner yet. So I'm getting ready to put this last outside border, and it's important that this point right here line up with this point right here. So the way I do that is I take a ruler and I line it up with that line into this inside border and just put a little mark like that using tailor's chalk. And then I grab pins and I flip the border over. I'm going to take and poke a pin right in that intersection where the 1/4-inch seam should be. And then I'm going to put this where the mark is about a 1/4 inch down and just line it up like that. And pin it in place, and then I pin several other places along the border, and that way those pieces and those points will match up perfectly. So next I'm going to finish this table runner top, and then we'll talk about quilting it. So I have the quilt all bound with safety pins, and I'm using Hobbs wool batting, which should give the quilting like a puffiness and show more. And then I'm using this dark green color as the backing, and that's also going to be the binding. So I have it pinned about every 3 inches or so. And the quilting design that I'm thinking about using is emphasizing these, they almost look like stop signs. And so basically just going like this, up, down, into the next one, up, down, into the next one, up, down, and then coming back the opposite direction and going down here, over, up, down, over, up, down, over, up. And so then that way I can just use my quilting foot and do straight lines. Now I may have to do it twice or 3 times to get some quilting in this middle section. So I'm not really sure what I'm doing with the middle section yet. And then in the border, I have this Chevy ruler that's designed by Angela Walters that fits into this space in the border quite nicely, and we'll do a diamond type design. So that's what I'm thinking about doing for the quilting. And using these safety clips is super easy to bind the quilt together for the purposes of quilting, and I'll show you the quilting when it's all done. As a quilt designer, I often have trouble deciding if my quilt designs are modern or traditional. What do you think? Is this a modern quilt or a traditional quilt? Put your answer in the comments. Also, any questions or other comments that you may have, and I'll be sure to answer all comments. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video of me making the Island Pop quilt using Island Batik's Maple Island fabric and Studio 180 design rulers. If you've liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so that you'll be notified when I have new videos. So we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.